Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so grateful you're joining me today. I am excited about my guest. I had seen her on social media on Kristen Cavallari's podcast, and she had some really powerful things to say. So I was excited to have her on our show to talk about emotionally immature parents, because we're all emotionally stunted in some way. Let's be honest with ourselves. If we have an attachment issue, maybe we have a trigger that triggers our inner child and we feel not good enough. We feel less than. Maybe we have a fear of abandonment. Maybe we have a fear of rejection or not being liked, and we just want to be loved. And if we didn't get those needs met from our parents, which is how we're neurobiologically wired, it leaves kind of a hole in our soul, it leaves these unmet needs. And we go out, we try to fill this with other people. And that doesn't work because they also have a hole in their soul. They also have unmet needs. Oh man, they didn't get it either in their childhood. So unless you're doing some serious work to heal that, which is what therapy does, and you're really working on your own triggers, your own reactivity, your own unmet needs for healing, we end up passing this along. And so let me introduce you to our guest today. Dr. Sherrie Campbell is a licensed clinical psychologist who specializes in helping healthy people cut ties with toxic people in their lives. She is nationally recognized expert on family estrangement, a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, top 1% podcast of the Sherrie Sessions, Cutting Toxic Family Ties, a well-known social media influencer, and a regularly featured media expert. She talks about her books, The Adult Survivors of Emotionally Abusive Parents, and she has a new book coming out in the next year or so that we talked a lot about. She gave us a sneak peek into that. She talked a lot about her own childhood. She was very vulnerable in sharing about her relationship with her parents and how that's affected her in her life and in her relationships and as a mother. And I think this is important for us to look within, be honest with ourselves, holding all the tender compassion on where we might need some extra healing in those places that have left a mark. And maybe it's so unconscious or subconscious, but it does affect us in relationships. There's no way of getting around it. We unconsciously bring those patterns, and not necessarily abusive patterns, but these unhealed, unmet needs into all of our relationships. If you want to jumpstart on that healing process, grab the free journal that I offer. It's a free guide at Kristen, KRISTEND Boyce, BOICE.com/free resources. And then you'll also get all the goodies that I give out for free. And this is not to spam you. Once a week, I give you a blog post on important subjects on the healing journey to really pay attention to, take in, and rumble through. So we had a very in-depth conversation. So here it is. And I hope you get a lot out of it. If you do, please share this conversation. That's how we get the podcast distributed to more people, is through sharing the podcast. And that means so much to me. And then writing a review. If you find the podcast really helpful, that's how people find it on Amazon and Spotify and on the web. So thank you for listening. And I hope this conversation is helpful to you and anyone else in your life that this may speak to. Here's my conversation with Dr. Sherrie Campbell. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so grateful you're here, and I have a treat for you. My guest has been all over social media, and she's written a number of incredible books. I went on your website because I knew about two, and I was like, oh, we've got lots of books here.
Yes, I have lots. I think I have 6.
At least, I think.
It's like just finished a workbook. So yeah.
Ooh, that's exciting.
I just birthed it, so I'm kind of breastfeeding it now, giving it a little editing. I'll probably turn it into my publisher after January or right at the beginning of the year, and then takes 8 months to print a book, but we'd have to go through all the editing. So it's still a ways out, but it is done, and I'm obsessed. It's actually my favorite of all my books. So
Dr. Sherrie Campbell.
you know
Okay.
it. I'm obsessed with this book. I'm like, I don't want to give it away, but I do because I really want everyone else to kind of get the work that I do. And it's not going to be in workbook format, I hope, because I think there's just a lot of journal prompting, but there's genuine chapters prior to the journaling. And I built a house, so it's really cool. It's just so cool.
That is cool. So what makes this one your favorite? Like out of all the ones, what makes this one different?
Because I really think that metaphors, I'm an athlete, so my coaches have really been phenomenal in giving me a metaphor so that I can visualize a movement or whatever it is that I need to do. And so I built a house where there's a basement and there's basement monsters that are our core wounds. And there's a whole journaling process to find what your specific monsters are and what your core wounds are. Then we go to the ground floor to stay grounded. Right. And I want to give that much fiction once someone to steal my stuff. But then there's a whole outside world that's about boundaries. There's a middle floor and a top floor. And the house is cyclical. The outside world affects the inside world, which brings up our monsters. It's a whole process. And I think it's a nice way to talk about how you feel. Like my patients will come in and be like, oh, I'm in the basement. And it's nicer than just using all the jargon. And it's a different, healthier way to maybe verbalize where you are or what you feel in a less threatening way because you're using a metaphor rather than all of this serious, like, you triggered me. You can be like, oh, you woke up a monster in my basement.
Oh, I love this.
It's kind of giving a new language. I'm a very creative person, and I've always been more creative in my office and more creative in the way that I work. And I just have found it to be very effective. And I think this book is just definitely my favorite.
How did it come through? What birthed it? What was
They asked me to write a book, and I was like, ooh, because I don't like to be, I feel like there's a pressure, and pressure kind of kills longing. But I've been speaking this language for many years in my office. And in my mind, I had to write this very clinical, very stuffy type of workbook. And that's not my vibe. And so I had my idea, but I'm like, oh, I don't know. I just don't know. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put the whole publisher thing to the side and I'm going to write my book. And that's how I feel like it came through.
well, that's Vin. I can't wait till it comes out.
I'm obsessed.
It'll be great for my clients and for anybody really, and couples. I can see this being really helpful for family systems.
Well, it's certainly helpful in my relationship. Like if he triggers a monster, I have to remember as I intersect the floor, it's like he didn't create the monster. So I shouldn't give him the full throttle. I can't let that monster out to the ground floor and cut him. So I have to go down and navigate like, okay, there is a trigger, that's for sure. So how much of the monster does he warrant? And it makes me get conscientious. I think it's just important for people to be curious when they get triggered because there's an insecurity that you're feeling there or there's a wound. And I think that instead of just being like, you wounded me, you have to then go, ooh, I'm wounded, but I want to be conscientious. I want to be curious because I want to be able to handle this with grace. And I wanted my message to get through. If I go out and I just attack somebody, one, then ew, I don't like me either. My message is lost and I hurt this person. And now they can't even hear me, right? So I think it's important to become curious so that you can become conscientious. So whatever you walk up the stairs with is an elegant, poised, clear, articulate person to the best of your ability, right? So I think that learning that is important because, in this whole world of emotional regulation, I think people are understanding it as they have to be less of the emotional person they are. That's actually not physiologically possible. The brain doesn't work that way. What we have to do is take a pause and be conscientious of what we're feeling before we open our mouth. So we want to control the time, the pace, and the tone, not the feeling. Feel all of it. Then work on controlling the timing, the pacing, and the tone. If you talk slow, just so you all know, you cannot yell. Well, I mean, you could sound like Dory from Nemo, I suppose, but you really can't yell. So if you just talk slow and you control your tone and the pace and the timing, I think that you get heard the way that you want to be heard.
That's so true. Because if someone comes at you really intensely, it activates you and you want to just protect yourself from that person or defend yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Not activating those defenses as much, potentially. I mean, in someone else.
And then it's just war. And then also, I think when you're communicating, it's important to learn to stay on topic. I think what a lot of people do is they'll say, wow, I feel really upset that you didn't follow through on A, B, or C, or D. And then the person gives you their opinion of your feelings. Well, now we've lost the topic. So I teach people to say, actually not asking for your opinion or your validation, because neither of those things are going to change how I feel. I would like to keep the conversation to how I feel. And if we cannot do that, I will work through my feelings on my own, because I'm not willing to sit in a conversation where you're going to make the topic about your opinion rather than what I feel.
Ooh. And how does that usually go down? If you say that, how is that received?
I've said it and I say it slow. And then I say, so it's truly up to you. We can table this for now and we can come back to it. But until I feel safe to say how I feel, I will stop talking in this relationship. And if I stop talking, it will be over. So I need to feel safe. I'm asking you to keep to the topic, not your opinion. I don't need your validation. I just need you to hear how I feel. And let's go from there. And most people, I think, are really willing to do that. I'll even do it in my office. Like, I had a mother-daughter, and this mother was completely incapable of showing up. And the daughter was like, well, I feel abandoned because of X, Y, and Z. And she's like, well, when I was a child, and I said, whoa, today we're not talking about you or your feelings. Today, we're focusing on that your daughter feels abandoned. How does it make you feel that your daughter feels abandoned? Well, I was abandoned. Again, today, we're not talking about how you feel. We can do that in another session. But today, she's like, well, I feel bad. I said, well, expand. You feel bad. Why? And then we had a little bit more productivity through that.
What's the best sessions ever when you can really work on a parent,
Yeah.
even as an adult, right? Child.
Oh, and this was an adult child.
Yeah, those are my favorite.
It's hard, and the daughter kept noticing that the mom kept just wanting to go back and reference herself. And the daughter's actually my client, and I said to her, you have to really lower your expectation. It's really up to you for you to decide, is she psychologically immature or is she emotionally abusive and robbing you of your life and your liveliness and your soul and your spirit and your expansion. That's totally up to you to decide. And then you can decide. And so in my book, there's levels. There's all these different places outside the house that people get demoted to, right? So it starts with empathy, then they disrespect you, you move them to sympathy, then it turns into compassion and then pity. So everybody's parents or family are different, and you have to have different levels of contact for various levels of abuse.
So where did your client end up with her mom? Because it sounds like the mom can't hear her.
The mom cannot hear her. The client is 21, and the client is parentifying and now wants to know about her mom's past, which she does know about the mom's past. And I said, we can do that, but I want to just let you know you're parentifying and you're trying to find a way to her through her pain, because that's all she talks about. But I want you to be in relationships that can mirror, validate, and honor your pain, because she has a habit of picking people who are very abusive toward her. Right?
She recreates that relationship she had with her mother,
Mm-hmm.
and we call it kind of codependency. Then you become the caretaker, and if they're happy, then you're happy. I mean,
Yeah. And the mom said, well, I can do another session, but not for like 9 months because she's so busy. Okay. So the client is starting to see through some of this stuff, and she was no contact with her coming into my office. I didn't initiate any of that. Also, I never suggest anyone do that. If they don't have to, you shouldn't, because you don't do that for sport. Lopping off limbs for sport isn't exactly what we're doing here in my office. But I did start a movement of no contact because I had no other choice in my own life. So I wrote about it.
yeah. Tell me about your journey with, because that's a long journey for folks typically. If they go no contact, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of fear, anger. I mean, you're working through all of these emotions. How did in your life you get to that point?
Well, I was cut off, so that was the game in my family is cut her off because I was the scapegoat and then make her beg back. And at 45, I was like, I just don't care anymore. They drained me of all tools, all desire, all motivation to do anything anymore. And when I didn't beg back, I think it shocked the system in the family. And then the twice a year contact got into effect that was very cryptic and abusive, sending broken, shattered gifts to my house with no gift receipt, or gifts that have the main piece missing, no gift receipt. Just insane, starving me and my daughter out of her college education that was left by my grandmother. And I was like, take it, take the money. I will figure it out on my own. The God of green paper isn't my God. So financial abuse. I was in midlife. I tried everything. I was getting abused over breathing wrong at some point. And for 4 years, the post-separation abuse was so insane that I didn't even get to start really living my life because I was like in this place in my new book I call no man's land. Like, okay, I'm not in there to kind of predict what I'm going to go through. And I could never have predicted all the abuse post-separation. And I lost everyone. The smear campaign is just still marching around in my cul-de-sac. And I just don't care anymore. I'm very indifferent, but it's been almost 9 years. So I have zero intent to go back. I don't hate any of them at all, but I don't like them. And I think liking someone and respecting someone is just far more important. I look at love as like the liver, it just regenerates. I don't wish them any harm. I don't have any malice. I have no desire to get revenge or retaliate. I just want to live my life. I want it to be beautiful and expansive. And I don't want to be stuck in a scapegoated role and kicked like a pack horse every day and living a narrative that has no truth to who I really am. So I just feel like getting out was the best possible thing for me to do to save my daughter. And I don't wish them any harm. I'm just very indifferent. Now and again, I'll get triggered because they'll send someone my way. But even then, it doesn't really even send me into my basement. It's like, oh, okay. Threw a stone at my house. No different, no change. It's just very confirming for me that thank God I left. Thank God.
I can see that it shifted your life.
Completely.
Uh-huh. There was an opening, like you got to be more alive. It seems like there was
I
a
couldn't heal as long as there was even a one-line drip of that poison going into my body. I tried every level of contact known to man. One, just because I didn't want to be judged in society. I didn't want to face all the cognitive dissonance that all families are good because it's just fundamentally not true. And not all parents love their children. I was not loved. Whatever that was not love. It just wasn't. That's not love. You don't treat someone you love the way that I was treated. You just do not. So I have a child and I know that. I can't even imagine having her made the microscope on my abuse even stronger because of how much I love her. It's like I can't even imagine ever hurting her by intent with calculated plans to damage me. And so it's just unbelievable. So I'm very grateful that it's all over here.
yeah, and that's out of no man's land, and then where is that? So your metaphor, where does that put you? If you're because no man's land is explain that more for folks, like what that
So, like, if you've been cut off, which they often do cut you off because you didn't obey or you didn't go along in the family script or you didn't allow them to use you again or whatever. If you stop mending the fence, it's like you don't know the life. I didn't try to leave for a new life. I just wanted the crazy to stop. They ran me out of it's like there was a rope or a bandwidth and it broke. And I felt it in my body, but I didn't have any idea about post-separation abuse. I didn't know all of these things could happen. Secondary abuse, where you get all the flying monkeys. I didn't deal with the whole freaking hellstorm of that stuff for a long time. And then I just started kind of looking like, oh gosh, there's like this whole other space where I'm free. I can live. I'm safe. I can go expand upon whoever my future self will be who or can be, wants to be, who I've always been trying to become. And I just walked very slowly into that space and mindfully and have created a really happy and a really peaceful, beautiful life for myself and my daughter. It's just incredible. I couldn't be more grateful. And I'm not special. So if I can do this, other people can do it, right? But I didn't do the brave thing bravely.
What I find is just about all of us on some level have grief about what the family we want or wanted, the mother we wanted or needed, or the father we wanted or needed, or siblings. It doesn't matter who it is, or grandparents, insert whatever family member. And they get caught up, well, other people have this. And it's hard for them to let go of the hope, possibility, and step into that grief. Can you say more about that?
I think hope is dope. It's like a drug because truly, for me, I would say 80% of the time it was really bad. But there was this like 20%. So abuse doesn't work without doses of kindness. You have to have that intermittent reinforcement to create a trauma bond. Further, as a child, they had more resources. They were far more intimidating to me. I was dependent on them, not out of codependency, but out of survival. I'm not going to go out at 9 and go make a living.
Get a mortgage. No.
Right. And then there's rules and roles that you're set in that you don't choose. And there's comparisons. So I had a sibling who was treated far differently than myself. And sometimes it was just shown to me how good they could treat him so I could see what I wasn't getting and I didn't deserve. It was very calculated. And I think he's worse off than me in life in the big picture, far, far worse, because they are all tied into these lies and these narratives and they keep each other's secrets and they do deceitful, antisocial, immoral things to help each other. It's sickening. So they haven't gotten any better, but to be out in the world by yourself is not how the human spirit is designed. We need connection. We need belonging. And the most important social group we can belong to is our family. So for a long, long, long time, I had what I would call cordial contact, where my phone became my externalized immune system. I'd see a name call up and I'd be like, can I do it today? Like, can I have this conversation where I'm just an audience member? I'm not even asked how I'm doing. Can I do that? And I would do it as infrequently as possible, but just to kind of keep the
Contact, keep the something.
I think that I got more abuse from society and continue to get more abuse from a societal space than even my family anymore. People tend to worry about what the abuser needs to be happy, what the abuser needs to change, what kind of treatment and support the abuser needs, completely leaving out what the survivor needs, how much courage it took, what kind of support and belonging can we offer the survivor. We're always currying favor and enabling an abuser. So I think the hope is dope because you have to face far more than just the abuse of your family. And it's sometimes easier for people to just have that thread attached to protect them from at least the other side of the onslaught. Right. But for me, no contact wasn't anything about anger. It was really about surrender. This is never going to change.
Acceptance of it too, right? I'm accepting they're never going to get it. They're never going to change. The patterns are ingrained.
And they don't want to change. I look at boundaries as I believe that I am fully respecting their boundaries. I'm asking these people to be different than they want and choose to be. That is disrespectful of me. I don't like it when people ask me and want me to change and be different than the authentic person I am. And so I set boundaries around that through my choices. So we don't look at boundaries as ever expansive as they really are. I am upholding their choices and honoring their choices to be exactly who they want to be, because I cannot get in alignment with who they choose and want to be by choice, not by accident. No one accidentally abuses anybody else. We know right from wrong. We learn it in school if we don't learn it at home, right? This is who they want to be, and this is what all their choices are. They want to be controlling, vindictive, manipulative, gaslighting, projecting. That's what they like. Who am I to tell these people that they cannot be that way? They cannot be that way for me. Therefore, I'm going to respect them and hold them in the space where they are, and I'm going to make different choices for myself because I don't like the way that they are. They also don't like the way that I am. So they can cut me off, but I have to mend a fence. Why? If it was a boyfriend, everyone would be like, run, get out. If it was a horrible friend, get out, drop that friend. Boss, leave that job. Family, nope, gotta stay. They're going to get old one day and you're going to regret it. Says who?
People say that to people and they're like, they feel bad for their aging parent. Maybe their aging parent remarried and picked an abusive person. And they're like, well, I feel bad for my mom. They feel bad. And so they just keep meanwhile, they're being abused mentally, verbally,
Right.
and emotionally by this other person, but they want to stay in contact with their mother. It's really
It's like it's parentifying again, right? Like there's
exactly.
9 marriages between my parents. 9. I
It's
mean,
a lot of marriages, right?
I didn't meet the 5th wife of my dad before he died. I don't care to meet her. I feel sorry for anyone that ended up married to that man. And there were many, many women in between. And there were many men in between for my mother and her 4. Okay. So, and I was expected to handle it like an adult,
Yep.
understand it like an adult, which even as an adult, you're an adult. You're like, wow, that's a lot of marriages. Well, yeah. Right.
Exactly. For so, hey, like you being a kid, either a kid or adult, it's a lot for you to go
They didn't pick good people.
yes.
Okay. So it's not like any one of those people was a good person to me. I had a horrible step family experience. One, there were far too many. And 2, they were bad people. So children shouldn't be carrying the weight of that. And death doesn't change people. Choosing to change is the only thing that changes people.
You
Death
need to
doesn't.
say that from the back because this is so hard for people to accept.
Someone said to me, because my dad was, and my mom was manipulating my dad's death, but they're trying to call me to the 1-yard line because he got sick. But his last words were a threat to physically harm me and put me in a hospital 7 years prior. So I don't know. I just thought, if he's going to be nice to me at the 1-yard line, all of a sudden, and he's had 7 years to fix this one. We had 15-year absences with this man in my life on and off. And I thought, well, I'm not his maker. And if he manipulates me to the 1-yard line for his own whatever, the maker is going to see that too. And there's no way for me to know if he's going to be cruel or kind. And neither of those, because the kindness would be for him, not for me. It's because he's scared to go and meet his flippin' maker. And he's a product of his own choices. I didn't handcuff him to get into cults and be a bully and physically abuse me. I didn't do that. So I just thought my body was like,
Your body is said no more.
no more. I didn't go. And I thought, if he has anything to say to me, he was a big, mean letter writer. He'd write you mean letters. I thought, well, then he can leave me one of his mean letters or could leave me a sticky note that said, I love you. I'm sorry I was a bad dad. I didn't get anything. So it really wasn't about me. If there was something super special or acknowledging or owning that he wanted to give to me, there are many ways that he could have done that. So I was being used because there's no atheists at the 1-yard line. And I saw it and I thought, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it for me. I wouldn't ever put my own child in that situation. And I just didn't care what anyone outside of me thought. I'm like, you're not in my shoes.
That's right.
Did he blow your face?
Yes.
No, he didn't. I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did it impact you in romantic relationships? So people say, well, that's my past and it's over
Oh
now.
my God, it still impacts me. Are you kidding me?
Absolutely. Because we're humans. This isn't,
We're humans. And that's why I have like monsters in the basement. I get all the time. But I'm so happy that I have my triggers because they make me grow. I don't ever want to get rid of my insecurities. Those are direct signposts on what area and direction I need to work on and in. I don't want to get rid of that anymore. There are days that maybe I wish I didn't spend so much time in my basement, but then there are days that I'm like, well, it's just where the work is, and that's where I'm at. And I have top floor moments. I'm not at a permanent residency there. Probably never will be.
Exactly. No one ever. I don't believe
No,
I
I
just
don't
think
believe that
that's
either. I don't believe in elimination. I believe in accepting everything as it is. No need to eliminate it. I think it's important to just be conscientious of what's there, why you tick the way that you tick. And yeah, I dated every asshole on the planet. I swear to God, if they had the blinking asshole sign over their head, I'm like,
there he is. And they look like they're in a different package. So I tell people they look like they're in a different package. They
yeah,
will. But then you get in there and they're not in a different package.
same face, different dude. Yeah, I was married twice. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do that again. So I haven't been married since I was 38. I have a man in my life that I love and adore. We've been together for almost 9 years. But for me, kids come first. And we met when our kids were in middle school. I'm like, nah, we're not changing schools and we're not doing all that. We're keeping our kids safe. We're adults. We've both been married before. We have the trophies. We don't need to do it again. And one day I think we will get married. But we have a freshman in high school. He has 2 sons, and I have a daughter. My daughter's 20. She's ending her sophomore year in college, and she's like just an angel baby, and I'm the luckiest. And I love his sons. I love being a boy mom because I'm such an athlete, and they're so fun. And we were really a good blended family. We have a really special connection. So I'm not looking forward to living with someone. Like, I have a whole princess house here.
Just the way you like it. Just the way
It's the way I like it, and cohabitating, I know, will probably be a challenge for me, so we're just patient, but the love is there, and there are aspects of him that I replicate from my childhood. I always will. He's a wonderful man, but there are aspects of his personality that I'm replicating. So instead of being mad at him about it, I'm aware of it. I articulate it when it's there. I let him know that it's doing this, and that's helping him grow as well. And we're kind of a nice team. It's a really sort of a sweet space. He doesn't have near the trauma that I do. So, like, there are days that I'm like, the gift of trauma is like your EQ gets so much development.
oh, yes.
And where he doesn't have a lot of trauma. So the EQ is a little like, oh, yeah,
That's a great way to put it. I've never heard someone put it that way. The trauma developed your emotional intelligence and connection and kind of helped you grow. His isn't as developed.
no.
You're helping him, I'm sure, helping him kind of
Oh, yes.
that and develop
He's
that.
like, you have changed my life. Like just like little things that'll fly out of his mouth. And you're like, oh, he doesn't really get it. He's so funny. Like I'll be wearing green and I'll show up and he'll go, wow, that's green. And I'm like,
So, well,
I'm
well,
glad you
well,
passed your color test. No, you look beautiful. I'm like, oh, let's start with the
with that.
beautiful. Right. And so we've had these funny conversations like the difference between an observation and a compliment. He means no harm. He's the sweetest man, those types of things. He doesn't have enough trauma that's ever sort of made him think before speaking in some sense. Right. Or I'll see that in my office between couples and there's a gap between us.
Yes.
The gap is harder for me because it's, okay, so wow, that's frustrating. But it wouldn't be if I had less trauma. But he's such a happy place for me because he's just so solid and so
Consistent.
grounded and consistent.
Yes.
And I'm like, "Ooh." We're like such a great couple because he's the passive to my active. And I get him more active. He helps me feel grounded and safe. And it's all the things that I think we each need.
Well, it's what you didn't get in your childhood. So here you are picking someone that has that to offer. See, sometimes
Yeah.
we pick people that don't have it to offer. And we're like, well, they look like they did. You get in there, they don't. He
Yeah.
has it to offer.
Yeah. And he had just sort of a solid The family's just very solid. For me, they're very on the surface. Like, I had to take normal people notes at his house. They talk about, like, paper shredders and stuff, and I'm like, I don't even know what kind of paper shredder. I need one of those. Yeah, I need to join the conversation.
Just say, yeah, let me join.
Yeah, and they, like, pass food at the table, and they do all the holiday fluff. It's like a trip for me. It's, like, all so normal, and it's superficial for me because they just talk about normal people stuff, and I had to plan when I'd go to the bathroom depending on how many knives I'd want in my back when I came back from the bathroom in my family.
Yeah. Those.
Like, okay, like, there's 6 people in the room, that's at least 6 knives in my back once the gossip starts.
Exactly. And you're going to be the target. You can actually go to the bathroom now and feel like, oh, there's no knives in my back.
Right? Or other things, like the mom's like, "Oh my gosh, I know you don't like caffeine," because I freak out on caffeine. "So I made you some decaf tea." And I was like, "Oh, God, I have to drink all that tea or she's gonna feel like I didn't appreciate it." Those are things that I've had to work through, like, I don't have to I was in the bathroom every 5 minutes, I'm like, "God," because I was so financially abused or anything that was given to me, it was like, "Well, after all I've done for you and I did this and I have done that." So I have a hard time receiving or the thought that so my therapist was like, "Well, Sherrie, as much as you want her to like you, don't you also think she's worried about you liking her?" I was like, "Wait, what?" I never would think anyone would give 2 shits if I liked him or not, the way I was raised. And I'm like, "Oh, really?" She's like, "Why would she make you special tea?" And I'm like, "Well, so she could use it against me and create like a war." And my therapist was like, "No." I'm like, "No. Oh God. Okay. Wow. I'm out of my element here."
But you're recognizing that our childhoods and the way we think, the whole experience of it plays a role because we're bringing that in unconsciously or consciously.
Yeah.
Right.
Why? Because if other people were happy, was the only shot at us being happy. If you don't want for anything, you don't take for anything. In my family, I literally learned to just say no to anything. I was abused once over free ski tickets. Free. She got them for free. She's like, "Do you know what value you're getting?" I'm like, "Wait, I've said thank you prior. I will pay you for them."
Even though they're free.
You just get an
That's
extra
so
$400.
right? For you. So confusing. It's a mind game.
Well, and the man I was with at the time was like, "Hell is going on?" And we left. He's like, "She's insane." I'm like, "I know. No, why would you offer me? They're free." Well, right. Oh my God. I don't know. I guess 1 plus 1 is the square root of 27 times 6 divided by 4. I don't know how to do that kind of math, you know? I was just dumbfounded in a family like mine. I was constantly trying to make possible out of the impossible. And that'll wear you out. So I think for me, I couldn't heal until all of it stopped. It all had to go. And then I could heal.
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing journey. Healing is an ongoing journey. I feel like we've done such a disservice. Like I go to this many sessions and then and maybe sometimes there are cases like that. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
In general, though, we've all had a lot of things happen. And the minute we say, I'm willing to face it, it's not going to be a one-stop shop. We're not drive-through therapy. Like,
Mhm.
here, give me my one session and supersize it, and then I'm on my way. It's a lifetime, I feel like, of
It is a lifetime because,
expanding yourself, expanding your heart instead of living in a protective place.
well, unless you get a lobotomy, like I had a guy, I was on his show, his podcast. I went down to LA and he was a quirky guy, very nice, but he's like, but you have a PhD. I'm like, yeah, lobotomy didn't come included in that. A PhD, students, we called it piled high and deeper because we all thought we were going to die going through it. But nothing that I learned, and this is of no offense to my education, I love it, I respect it, I'm proud of myself, but it taught me nothing about my own trauma, not one thing.
Isn't it
It did not
remarkable?
help me with my family. Family systems did not help me with my family. It might have defined roles, but it left out a lot of information.
What do you think the most important piece of information it left out? If you had to go, okay, I know there's a lot, but if there was one,
But like, oh, you're the IP. Okay, so now there's a label and the
identification.
right? Or you're codependent. I was not enabling anyone to abuse me. Okay. I had to be with these
Oh,
people.
they think codependent in your family system.
Well, and even that I learned, I
Relationship.
took it out. So I might have been in a relationship that was unhealthy for me. And yes, I had codependent traits at the time, but I've never not been a very strong, independent woman. And I confronted all of those monsters and I left every single one. So we leave out the resiliency of the identified patient. We just label this as the person who's the scapegoat. We forget to transition that the scapegoat is the cycle breaker.
Yes.
The scapegoat is the truth teller. The scapegoat is the goat.
You just said something that I know we're almost out of time, but the truth teller. This is what I try to liberate people. The truth will set you free. It sounds so cliche and metaphorical, and it's so true. When you
Yeah.
live in your truth, and if you can't be with people and how we deliver it, how we say it is important. Like you said, you're saying it slower, you're watching your tone of voice, but the truth is key. And when you can't speak truth in your family or in a relationship, what does that do?
And I think too that the truth will cause you to lose people.
Yes.
So that's another thing that's left out, right? And that we're also afraid of losing, that we don't want to face it, so we stay. And then staying is considered good behavior. So I've learned that being nice and being good are two fundamentally different things. Being nice got me abused. Being nice got me saying yes when I didn't want to. Being nice got me walked on. Being nice got me all of that. But to be a good person, I had to be willing to have strength and I had to be willing to lose relationships that weren't serving me. To be a good person means to be good to myself and to make decisions that align with my own well being. I think codependent people are some of the strongest warriors out there because they're staying in really horrific circumstances because they don't know a way out. And for some of them, there might not be a way out. In all reality, maybe fiscally they didn't get there. This person has more resources, whatever the situation is. I just think that we forget to look for the good in the negative role that family systems theory will put it out. I love the structure of it, but 9 marriages didn't really fit into family systems. It kind of focuses just on the nuclear family. It doesn't really broaden out into some other things that I lived, right? So I started writing my own books because I wasn't finding my whole self in other books. No contact is all over the literature if it's a romantic relationship. But it just was never, well, you can't do that with your family. But why? Why can't we? People can be abusers. Last time I checked, families were made up of people, and any group of people can be called a cult. So if that would tell me then that if families are made up of people, then families can be abusive. I think in family systems, it almost there's this idea that children cause bad parents. The identified patient, why is it IP? Why is it that one person? Why aren't the parents the IPs? It's always a child. Well, my parents were abusers long before I came into this world, and they stayed that way throughout the raising me, but I'm the IP. Why? Why me? Why isn't it them? And then they continue to abuse, guilt, manipulate, and control me now, but I'm still the IP because I told the truth and I got out. So to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense in so many ways. That's missing for me. I'd like to see it languaged differently.
Yeah, and you're doing that. You're pioneering that. So that's fantastic. As we close out, what has been the most transformational book that you've read or made an impression like it just opened you up in a new way?
2 books,
Okay.
The Women Who Run with Wolves
Mhm.
and The People of the Lie by Dr. Scott Peck, broke me open into it's not me. He talks about toxicity or a spirit of mental illness in a way that I've never heard. And I had to read The Road Less Traveled, his first book, all over every level of my education. But The People of the Lie, that is the book that people should be reading.
And that title is fantastic.
Knocked my socks off. It liberated me. It just made me feel like everything that my body had ever told me was true. I am not the identified patient. I'm not the problem. And family systems says that IP isn't the problem, but it's the problem that brings you into therapy. So to me, that's not right. Scott Peck just defines evil or toxicity and why they never change, why they can't change, and why they won't change in a way that is so articulate and so clear. That book was very life-saving for me. Women Who Run with Wolves really validated for me that my intuition and my sensitivities and all of my things were not bad, that I was told they were so bad. My compulsion toward the truth wasn't bad. It was my compass. And it saved me from further toxic relationships with men. Brought me into the power of like what it is to be such a special, unique woman, and that I have all these facilities inside of me that make me so capable, and not in any masculine way, in just a very feminine, strong, resilient way. That book is magical.
Oh my gosh, this conversation's been magical. So thank you so much. If the audience is like, I love Dr. Sherrie Campbell, I love Dr. Sherrie, where can they find you? Because I'm going to put all your books in the show.
Yeah. DrSherrieCampbell.com. And then my podcast, Therapy Sessions, Cutting Toxic Family Ties, is just doing so well, and people are absolutely loving it. I have free episodes. It's a $5 subscription to get the more private therapy episodes. I mean, it's not meant for therapy, but it's doing a lot of good. And to get what I do in my office for $2.25 an hour for $5 is quite the bargain. And I have live episodes you see on YouTube, and I interview some really incredible people. So I'm in all the places, and I'm in social media on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I'm learning TikTok. And
Good for you. I haven't conquered that yet. It's
oh my God, it's so
so much
confusing.
to learn. It is.
It's so confusing. I'm like,
Well, good
okay.
for you. Good for you. I'm like, you go. And when will your new workbook come out? Do we have a timeline or not yet?
No timeline. I would probably a year and a half, 2 years, because then take almost a year to get a book edited, printed is a full year.
Okay.
But I know there's a lot of editing going on. I think we'll get through pretty quickly.
And then come back on, because then we're going to talk
Okay.
about it more. Because I didn't want to give too much away, because I was like, oh, I wanted to go all into it. So when it comes out, I'll have you back on when it comes back. Dr. Sherrie, I'm so grateful for you and your work. Thank you so much.
That means so much to me. Thank you so much. And I hope the listeners enjoyed it, and take care of you.
Be well, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week, and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks, and have a great day.